All right, so welcome. Welcome to District 4, to the point for information and news. I'm your host, Love. I'm here a little bit earlier today because we are going to talk about a subject that you asked me to talk about, which was what's going on in Hollywood. We're going to talk about and give facts to back up the changes. Now, we've all noticed lots of them, but no one ever just sort of collectively put it together and just sort of said what exactly is happening to entertainment as a whole. And we talked about it a little bit in one of the videos that I did probably later today at 11:30. But you will see that we talked a little bit about just the changes that were happening and the breakdown of the celebrity, the loss of the mystique of the celebrity. We talked about the things that were going on inside of that lifestyle, if they were different from what was happening from before. So we're going to dive into that. I'm going to start by saying, and I quote, right? Hollywood is experiencing a significant decline. It's marked by reduced film and television productions, decreased cinema attendance, and a shifting entertainment landscape. Factors contributing to this decline include the rise of streaming services, the changes in audience preferences, and the issues related to production cost, tax incentives, and labor disputes. Now, I'm going to use upfront just to say my references because there's quite a few of them, and I wanted to make sure I quoted some of them or quoted them. Mostly the labor of statistics. Sounds very interesting, but you can actually get some good insights from using that as a reference. And this is just to see what type of numbers we're talking about, what type of statistics, what type of data. Also, it goes without saying that I think a lot of people notice it. I think it's one of those things that we has always been there. It's been there so long. It meaning like Hollywood and entertainment that you were just sort of raised on being infatuated by it. It doesn't necessarily mean it wasn't created. There wasn't a lot of propaganda. There wasn't certain people being forced on you. You know, there's always music being played or songs being played. But I think at some point everybody started looking at several factors. So let's talk about some key factors contributing to sort of Hollywood's decline. And we'll incorporate in that other forms of entertainment because they're also experiencing it and maybe just on a little bit of a different level. But they still have that sort of reality. We can start by a lot of people starting to listen about these internal, you know, clubs, for lack of a description. And I don't want to repeat the name a billion times because people keep hearing it and, and its association. And we look at the interview, if I use as a reference, Shannon Sharp's interview with Cat Williams. Cat Williams just sort of kind of revealed his experiences, we'll say it that way, with the entertainment industry. And as it turned out, it was sort of related to a whole bunch of other people's experiences with entertainment. And as it began to branch out a little bit more, it started to mesh into the music industry and people's experiences in the music industry. Now, if you remember back, you'll note that there were a lot of Epstein, Weinstein, slash, Uncle Russell, slash, type of situations where there were these sort of secret abuses of men and women in a sort of unusual setting, right? And I think it started with just people just not really believing it. I mean, people heard it, but it was never anything to show it. And those people were traditionally outcasts, right? They were ostracized almost immediately for just even saying anything about it. But time started to pass, and that sort of became something that people were maybe listening a little more closely to. So I want to get that part out of the way because I'm pretty sure everybody's going to throw that in there. But I want to say that we don't want to sit and just sort of detail that level of salaciousness. I get it. It's salacious. We're going to have to mention it. It probably has something to do with what's going on or behind the scenes of what it really did for the audience was take what they thought was sort of a glamorous thing. I like to use Hugh Hefner for the example. And it's because using this example, it's something that's more visible for everybody. When you were in the movement, when Hugh Hefner did come out, he spoke about women empowerment and that he was, all for women and women were going to, be able to express themselves in this sort of way, the way that he felt women should be expressing themselves. And for years, decades, we believed it. We really did. I mean, we thought the illusion was real. And it wasn't until after Hugh Hefner passed, and a little bit before, and I think it started a little bit with Holly Madison, but a little bit before that, but not, maybe even a little bit even more before if you go back to the first book that was written about the inside workings of Hugh Hefner's establishments and businesses. Also in his home, right? But no one listened back then. We're talking about when people really just started going, okay, what just happened? And when they went on The Girls Next Door, the image was almost solidified because it looked like he was just, maybe a little too old for these women, but still they were making choices and allowing this to happen. Well, as it turned out, if you follow the story, none of that was actually true. It was actually a great level of exploitation, and there was a great level of a lot of people not really feeling that they had choices other than what they were being told. They were almost mentally and somewhat physically imprisoned. Now, why am I saying that? I'm saying that because that wasn't revealed for a long time. It takes a long time for what you do wrong to catch up to you. Everybody hears this thing. Everybody thinks they're better than that. And at the end, you lose what is the most valuable for you, which is why you were covering it up in the first place. So in Hugh Hefner's case, his biggest thing, everything he wanted to leave, that legacy of who he was tarnished. And he did not want that. If you listen to the people that wrote the books, if you listen to people that knew him back then, if you listen to all the non-disclosure agreements, if you listen to all of, they were basically saying, and they will all say, and have said, this is public, so I'm not making this up, or just saying it on my own. They literally said his image was important to him. And it was the one thing that he lost at that. So very interesting. Now, we've talked about that. We've said it. Let me cover some other stuff. Okay, because that's probably part of that was the beginning of the cracks, I would say. I mean, the cracks started to show. But while that large hole was there were little mini holes that were even greater in the destruction of what was going to happen. And the rise of streaming. Now, we know this from Napster. For those of you that probably don't even remember now, it was like the original Spotify type scenario. But it was back then you could only buy, records. There was no downloads or anything like that. And Napster changed that, right? Napster came out. Napster was actually ridiculed and just made to feel like they were gonna, basically be in trouble if they kept doing it. But they didn't care. They continued on, and that was the beginning and the rise of this sort of streaming scenario. Now we remember streaming platforms like Netflix, Disney Plus, and others have significantly altered how people consume entertainment, right? And this became even more significant during COVID, right? Remember, Netflix used to just be a service. It was like an online Blockbuster, or Hollywood Video, for those of you that don't remember Blockbuster, but Hollywood Video, Blockbuster, any type of video store. It was literally that, but online. Little fun fact about Netflix. Originally, Blockbuster was offered a partnership with Netflix. And Blockbuster apparently, as a company, did not believe that Netflix would, what they were doing made any sense. Like, you don't need to have videos sent to people's houses on. You don't need to have that, because at the time they were just DVDs being sent, and you would borrow it, just like you would at the video store. You put it back, and then you mailed it back. And Blockbuster thought this was ridiculous. What's interesting about that is that, look at the reversal, right? Blockbuster's gone. Blockbuster was dead wrong because Netflix is still around. So, a little fun fact about Netflix. But the streaming services, I think, made it. I think one of the, if I look at just streaming services as a whole, and I look at its relation to Hollywood and how it used to be, entertainment and how it used to be, but specifically Hollywood at this particular point in. Hi, welcome. How are you? You guys came a little late. Yeah, I'm early today, so it's a. I get it. Those are. I always say click the notification bell. So thank you for clicking the notification bell. But anyway, so I was telling the story about. We're talking about Hollywood. I'm going to give some factors contributing to its decline. We're going to throw in a little entertainment for those of you that are just now joining us. So streaming platforms. I think one of the I would say not a mistake, but it was one of the things that contributed to the decline using something like Netflix or Hulu is that when it went too fast, and I remember this model from way back in the day, was a strategic plan to make a lot of remakes, which has gone haywire, and to send it to streaming services as fast as possible. I mean, you can literally, have a movie come out one weekend and it is just on streaming services about as fast as it got there. And I think that started before it needed to. I feel like it really did contribute to it, because those people that didn't want to go to the movies anyway could have that movie for somebody that was planning on going to the movies, and they just watch it comfortably at home. Dates. If people forgot that. There were dates when you didn't Netflix and chill. You went to the movies. I.e., some of you that are way older, you went to the drive-in. Because I cover all the generations. And then of course, Z has no idea, what it meant to really go to the drive-in or spend time at the movies. They Netflix and chill. That's what, a little bit before that, maybe some millennials. But it's Netflix and chill didn't exist. Which did was go to the movies. And even during the Great Depression, you went to the movies. But it was sort of the mystique of going to see something that you don't normally get to see. During the golden era, remember, it came shortly after, I would say the Great Depression. Movies became an escape. So you went to the movies to see a movie on a screen that you don't normally have. You didn't have the option of sitting in the house and it's just there. So of course streaming services made a huge difference. Because they go there too fast. There was a movie I wanted to see and I literally didn't have time to go to the movies to see it. And by the time I had the time, and it was maybe 2 weekends later, it literally had been on Netflix for, I don't even know how long, probably about a week. I didn't even need to go. So of course that's going to make a decline, right? You don't have to go to the movies just to escape. You don't. You can do that all day pretty much. With just streaming, you can just literally stream movies back to back. Part 1, part 2. Part 1, part 2. But you can literally stream movies that you had to go to the movies to see, and you had to go to see the sequel, and you had Godfather. You had to go to the movies to see Godfather 1, you had to go to the movies to see Godfather 2. You could have waited for video for Godfather 3. You didn't really have to go by the time that one came out. It was still at the movies. I'm not saying it wasn't at the movies. I was saying by the time. Yes, we're going to get into that. Somebody's talking about, what about celebrities? Celebrities. Okay, so the celebrity scenario we're going to get into. And we're going to talk about that sort of cancellation is the term it's called now. We've canceled celebrities, but I don't think it's so much that. I think the Hollywood culture clashed with social media culture. And we'll go into that a little bit to answer that question, but I want to get some more of these key factors out. We'll go back to shifting our audience preferences because there's a growing preference for fast-paced, ready available content, which streaming provides, right? Over traditional Hollywood movie experiences. And I did talk about that just like 2 seconds ago. And I don't think it's necessarily a preference. I think it fits in with what life is turning into. It's sort of social media when we went on COVID and everybody was home and nobody could leave, you had no choice, found the joy in finding things that you didn't normally get to see. People love to binge. I am a binger, I know. People love to binge. And and I started doing that during COVID. Laying in the bed, you know, me and my man, and just binging. And that's what we did, or family members were binging. Product shifts. Major studios have been moving products to other states and countries like Georgia and New Mexico. Just due to the factors like lower cost, tax incentives, and less like stringent regulations. And I think the key there, you would think it's all the other stuff, but really it's the regulations because it costs money to override those. Not to say to override them, but for filming, for example, the payments to do that. And Hollywood, which would have been the staple for that, is more expensive now. Not just, I mean, people used to put a little backpack on and jump in their car, say bye to their families from a small town, and they drive to Hollywood, because they wanted to be in pictures. And I think that shifted. It shifted because you didn't have to do that anymore. Right? There was a time when you needed to film that movie there. There were so many movies about making movies in Hollywood or living in Hollywood that were Hollywood-based movies. And you'll see a decline in those as well because you would have to film there for that to happen. I think one of the things that's happening in Los Angeles, and I get what they're trying to do, they're trying to make that city not as accessible to just everybody. And it sort of built its reputation on that. Little fun fact about Hollywood Land, it was called back then. But when it started to get from that into what it would eventually be in its heyday, it started with encouraging famous people to go there and live there. When it was Hollywood Land, it was really turning into the place. That's how people go, why do a lot of celebrities? Is it because they film films there? It's because it was encouraged at the beginning. So it started out wanting to be a place where people were famous, a place where people spent money, a place where only the elite could live. The weather was always great. Everybody wanted to be, a part of Hollywood for decades. I mean, even way after it started. But the interesting thing is that's why it's like that. It was started like that. That's what it was for. And they knew that it would bring money to the town. Of course, they didn't know at the time it would turn into an entire lifestyle. They were already living these types of lifestyles, but it turned into, for the people that were on the outside, that you had to do something to get in it. It became like its own official club. And during the heydays, we say like the 50s and stuff, you have to remember, I said this earlier, they worked for the studios. So they were an investment. It was in their best interest to give them etiquette classes, to change their look because their look, everything was physical. It's going to be on screen, to make sure their voices sounded a certain way so that it wasn't irritating because movies used to be silent at one point. All of these things, they were basically, I hate to use the word grooming, but they were groomed by the studio they worked for. They could not work at other studios without being loaned out. And that was the original model. That's why you couldn't do anything unless it was approved by the studio. Okay? the transition from that to where we are today gave people freedom. But with that freedom takes away what you're trying to build. So say it in that way. Somebody said they had more class back then. They were trained to do that. They taught literally. If you take one of the most glamorous ones back then, and we'll say Rita Hayworth, from her name change, her name was Margarita. I think it was Cantina or something like that. Somebody, fact check me on her last name, but first name was Margarita. She was a dancer. She had black hair. She was Mexican. They changed her into a redheaded. She got LASIK on her forehead so that her hairline went down further. They gave her etiquette classes, speech classes. They turned her into Rita Hayworth. Rita Hayworth, it is quoted, said herself. There used to be a show called Mysteries and Scandals, and I used to love that show, and she said it. That one of the people they were interviewing said she said that they all wanted to know Rita Hayworth, but she was just Margarita. Like, they literally turned you into what you needed to be, not necessarily who you were, but what you needed to be. So I gave that as the example. Yeah, because they literally, that's what they were doing. They literally were saying, let's take this person and literally turn them into a star. They meant that literal back then. They didn't mean it so much here. It just kind of means, hey, we're going to give you some publicity shots and all of these things. We use some of the old techniques, but we've changed a lot. But, we're still going to kind of do the same thing. But what you didn't find out and what you didn't realize is that it stemmed from that very strict model. You couldn't date who they told you not to date. You could not speak if they said you could not speak. Pregnancies were regulated. Time spent away from the studio was regulated. So it was really just that what we call the golden era. And you said they're so well spoken and they were so beautiful back then because you learned how to act, right? You didn't have ex-strippers. This is no disrespect to the profession. Please do not send me hate mail. But right now we have a lot of people in adult entertainment, singers and rappers and actors. We have a lot of people that come from an industry that's the behaviors are different, and they don't have to be regulated. They're not gonna. You can't monitor. You don't own that person at this point. They own themselves. So they can say if they want to, twerk on the camera at a basketball game, that's what they're going to do. Because there was the reason why, you have to remember that era. The reason why they were the reason why they were glamorous, the reason why they were actual ladies back then is because they taught you how to act. And guess what? It wasn't all bad because we still love it. We still love old movies. We call that the golden era because we had a lot of men and women. They wore suits. They spoke well. They said, they didn't talk and complain and go all in on the bad things that are happening. And although there was stuff going on probably. But that's why you're saying that, I would say. Do you think that's pretty accurate? Somebody share with me. Yeah. Yeah, do you prefer, you probably watch new movies too, but do you prefer? Yeah, yeah. Somebody's saying like celebrities were actually earned their spot, and that's true. You had to have some level of talent there. I was talking about this the other day. I guess that's why you're bringing it up, but I was talking about this the other day. That talent, you don't have to have it now. And we made it easy to not have it. Because we keep, I talked about American Idol at one point and I said, when you have stuff like Condom Style and, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, or you have Chocolate Rain, or you have like some of these songs that made popular because they were bad, sort of take a turn. You have to understand the motivation behind certain things in Hollywood is to put those things out there. But it clashed, as I said earlier, with social media. real life, yep, somebody just said it. In real life, it clashed with reality TV. You believe that? Yes, yes. Somewhat, yes. First American reality TV show? You don't think I know the answer to that, do you? It was on. I do. I do know the. Yes, I do. It was on CBS. Oh, I'm good at Trivial Pursuit. It was on CBS, accredited to not the real world. No, it's not the real world. Before that, CBS had a show called American Family. Fact check me. No, it wasn't real world. I promise you. Somebody said you had to remember. I don't think I ever saw it, but I do know that that's if you can fact check me on that one. It's absolutely that was really the first reality show. It was the first one, and there was a divorce on the show, and nobody knew if you when they looked back and talked about the behind the scenes stuff. Nobody knew she was gonna sit. She meaning the wife. It was like a wife, the husband, the son. I think who ended up being gay, and he came out on the show. I think, and then there was might have been that might have been the it might have been one more person, but the highlight of the story that this we were following this family because it was a real people, and they said she walked in the room, she meaning the wife, the husband was sitting there, and she sat down and asked him for a divorce, and nobody knew it was coming, even the viewers. So the shock value for the viewers were the same shock value for the production staff. Nobody knew she was going to say it. So, fact check me though. And I would say people remember most the real world, but not really. That wasn't really before that. It was that CBS show. Somebody said they're gonna look it up. Please look it up and let me know. Let me know if I'm wrong. But you did not think I had the answer. I know people don't. I have a wealth of little trivial facts. I study this stuff. um, Yeah, was it popular? Yeah, yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. Yeah, I think a lot of people. I mean, I don't know the stats on that. I'd have to look them up, but I think it was a high ranking series at the time. I don't know how many episodes. I don't. Was it the same format as the real world? No. Um, I mean, in the fact that it's real, yes, but each reality show is almost the same shock value. It's just put in a different setting. So, what Real World did was what was literally a psychological experiment originally, where they put a group of people that aren't related, don't know anything about each other, and forced to live in a space together. It's usually like a room where somebody put in a room and they observe you. So, it's the same style. Um, No, I do know that story. Somebody's telling the story about the Truman Show, but the real one. That's very good at trivia, actually. So for those of you that don't know, now we're talking about reality shows. See, now I opened the floodgates. There was a real live Truman Show. The Truman Show, meaning the movie, was like an experiment that was done by. Give me the name if you know the name. An experiment that had actors put in sort of like a dome type of thing that was set up like real life. And they didn't know it, but the audience did. And so they sort of observed these people. Well, I think to keep ratings up, the producer of the show at the time, or the creator of the show at the time, created a flood. It tried to create the drama of people being caught in this sort of flood. But they killed, I think it was 250 actors. And so the actors revolted. They basically, there was an anarchy, and they were like, you know, get us out of here type of thing. Once they realized what was going on, once they realized this was like not real. Yeah, look, a fact check me, peeps. I don't say stuff without knowing that it's almost 100% true. Now, there may be little pieces. I don't know the producer's name and all of these things. It was so long ago. But fact check me is a true story. That actually did happen. And those lives were actually lost. Yep, absolutely. Survivor. So Survivor, it wasn't even credited as the first reality show, but I think it was the first one put in a setting like that. I believe Real World was before that. Somebody fact check me. But the first one with Richard Hatch, who ended up winning, He was the first person that made it sort of like a how to play the game, which is still repeated like a record. Nobody has an original thought consistently throughout reality competition shows. The same thinking, and it was literally Richard Hatch that you have to credit for making that reality show what it ended up being for the first season, because he literally told his strategy and nobody left it. I mean, even now on reality competition shows, everybody wants to be Richard Hatch. Everybody does the same. They go in, they're going to be this sneakiest, they're going to be the most they're going to be able to get. And I'm like, it's old already. Like the storyline is like it's over. Like let's try something else. But people copy, so you get a lot of. One of the things that I don't. There goes reality TV. Yeah, I call it mindless TV, and this is no disrespect to reality shows. I do watch them. I'm just saying it's one of those things where one person wins doing one thing, and everybody uses the exact same thing. They want to replicate that win. But you have everybody copying. So it's a lot harder to do. His was original because no one knew he was doing it. And once he won, because he won all the money at the end, once he made it to the end, you had every other show after that doing that. Every other person after that. Hi, how are you doing? Yeah, I mean, it was exciting at the time, I think, because no one had ever seen that play itself out, like with thoughts and side comments and everything. So you got to see all of the psychological parts of it play out and then watch people's reactions to it. And I think that became the fascination in the beginning with reality shows. Changed the people on the show. It didn't, reality shows didn't change their formula. The people that wanted to be on them changed. And there was a big obsession with wanting to be the standout character, you know, quote unquote, standout person, quote unquote. And so you start to compromise the quality of people that are on there. And this is no disrespect. If you've been on a reality show, fine. But a lot of them compete for attention and screen time. And it starts to become visible after a while. And that's why you have almost everybody on a reality show being known. Because it's really the same people repeated in a different setting. Starting from most of the original. Interesting enough, go back and look at the original shows. Go back and look at American Family. I mean, I'm sure since you probably download it now. I mean, you can pretty much find anything on streaming. Go back and look at, the first Real World season. Like just the first episodes of each one, and then go back and look at Survivor. And you will start to see a pattern. You'll start to see the same. So Big Brother, yes, it's based on that too as well. But I mean, it's a same dynamics. Not the first season. If you look at the first season, how I know, don't ask me how I know all this stuff. If you look at the first season, but I guarantee you, if you check it, I'm telling the truth. Look at the first season of, since we're talking about Big Brother, they were very cordial. The one girl didn't want to vote so badly she flipped a coin, or she rolled a die. True story. You'll see it. They weren't like the seasons after that. The seasons after that, people started competing for screen time. It didn't lose its appeal because there's a whole group of people in the world that now we're social media fanatics. You're constantly on a social media. And because of that, the type of people we started to see in Hollywood also changed. Facts. I mean, just follow the dialogue, right? Follow the people. What are the people saying? This is what the audience is telling them. Hollywood's very easy because it's like a bubble, so it's very easy to not pay attention to what your audience is actually saying to you. It's very easy because you're so isolated on a little island over there. Los Angeles, in and of itself, is like a little island. When you go off to other places, you're almost dumbfounded. You're like, what the heck is going on in this town? Like, what's wrong with you people? Like, Don't you guys get up at 6 to work out? Like, what is wrong with you? Don't you eat salads? Like, what is with all this extra food? You start going because that's what you're used to. What? When's the last time you had a facial? You just what? You don't have a cleaning lady? It starts to be sort of this isolated little island in thought process. Or what your rent is how much? You got to be kidding. That's not a bargain to you. Like, so you get in there, you sort of get sucked in, you isolate yourself in there, and then you forget what the regular audience is like. You kind of start judging everything based on what everybody in Hollywood is like. People from LA are different. Well, maybe that's why it's a little. Look at how expensive it is to live there. So you have to have a certain. That's another thing. It's isolating. Hollywood. It's designed to keep people out of it. Not out of it, but you have to have a certain something to get in it. If that makes sense. And that's what you wouldn't take that away from it because that's the selling point. But when you start shifting the audience's point of view, you have to pay attention to those shifts, and Hollywood just did not do it. They're trying to catch up to social media, which is a lot faster. Some of these places in Hollywood are on social media, but it isn't like it is with the regular social media people. And that's just because the pace is different, the timing is different, what the audience is looking for is different, and you have to be a really, I mean, some people have a social media person, or social media team. They're just kind of doing, what the studio thinks they need to be doing. But when you have a real social media team, you have a team that sort of understands the whole and what the audience how the audience sees the whole. Don't they do that for film? No. There was a time when they did that for film because that was all you had. But they sort of changed their model, but they didn't change it in a way that benefited the studios themselves. They still tried to hang on a little bit to the end. Sometimes when something is just obliterated, it's just gone. Blow it up. It's over. Start and you go from where you are. And I think that's very hard to do. Easy to say here sitting here, but very hard to do as a whole. You've got to get a bunch of people on a page that they're not even used to being on. You have to get a bunch of people on a page that's not even written yet. And you've got to write a story that's never been written before. So that's not easy. But it needs to start happening or they're going to continue to fall. Okay? You're getting tired of. So do you see, when you see a celebrity, answer this question. You see a celebrity on social media. How do you feel about them versus when you see them on screen, or does it change? Somebody said Kim. Kim K wasn't on the big screen, though. She was already a reality person. Somebody said she was on a screen. Yeah, we got that. We know how she became famous. We're just saying, was she ever in? She actually was in movies. I'm lying. She was in Tyler Perry's Temptation. That's the one time I saw her. So I lie. I take it back. She actually was. But not like known as a movie person. She was known as a reality star. Too much overexposure. Follow all the time. Do you follow them more? The people that are saying they follow them still. Does that mean you're following them more on their social media page than you are their movies? Yes. Yes. Oh. So could that be one of the reasons it's taking away from when you see them on screen? Well, I say that because back in the day, that's why they kept them from everything. They had very strategically planned, you know, stuff, and they didn't go outside of that. So now you can go outside of that. They can see or hear of a celebrity every day. It is a balance because if you don't do it, then you're forgotten, right? In a weird sort of a way. People are like, whatever happened to? But if you do it, you can be exposed at a time you just don't want to be. Not like paparazzi. Paparazzi was a little bit different. That was a whole different era, believe it or not. Not to say that paparazzi doesn't exist now, it just doesn't exist in the same way. And it changed. Some say because of Princess Diana and the Dodi and all of that when they had the unfortunate incident. Some people said she was hounded so much by these sort of aggressive paparazzis because they got paid back then, maybe even now, for any little snippet of a celebrity at an awkward moment. And it became that because we had only seen them in strategically planned moments. To the point where if you try to go back now, people see right through it. And how do you fix that? Because that was the base of Hollywood. So how do you fix a strategically planned moment? And everybody knows it's strategically planned at that point because back then we didn't know, or they didn't know. How do you fix that? Suggestions. Let me know. I'm gonna say production shifts. So major studios have been moving productions to other states, like I said, Georgia, New Mexico, because of payments, right? Labor disputes. Recent strikes by writers and actors, while resolved, has disrupted production schedules and highlights and ongoing challenges in labor negotiations within the industry. Now, this is definitely more recent. You had unions like SAG and AFTRA for it used to be just radio people, but it's AFTRA SAG now, or mostly radio people, that were designed to protect because they really were not protected prior to these particular unions, right? Union type projects. Yes, in fact, some of the people from the Golden Era did start SAG, which was SAG stands for Screen Actors Guild as an acronym, but it's just called SAG and is now called After SAG. I think it's American Federation of Television and Radio Artists. Correct me if I'm wrong, but AFTRA is an acronym for I think that. I might have missed something, but yeah. Yeah, so someone's like, you get tired of seeing them strategically planned, but you also don't want to see them, you know, always doing something to get attention. That is the nature of the job if you're an actor. So it's a little hard to take that part out. They're going to do that. Just by definition, that's your job. It's to get attention because it brings attention. Used to be that it brought attention to what you were doing. But sometimes they're doing a press junket or, they're doing their rounds and they're talking about so many other things. You don't even remember why they're there. When it was specifically designed to talk about what their project actually was. But and it's another thing too when you start getting interested in the person, and the person is not, restrained. Yeah, somebody said they're tired of this. Did you say stripper culture? Of what? Music industry? What do you mean by stripper culture? Not that I don't know what you mean, but let's give a little bit more explanation for the audience. You said everybody wants to look like a stripper. What do you mean? Are you saying what the younger generation are taken with that type of prowess or persona, maybe? I don't know. Oh, what they used to do? Oh, you're talking about like Cardi B and all those people. Um, that's just what they were, though. I mean, I guess it does. Yeah, you would have to say it influences people. And it's true if you look at the looks of today, not the classic looks. Some people say this, with the classics, but if you just look at and you dress like everybody does today, it could be said that could be an argument to be said. We'd have to think about that one a little bit more. More like drag queen. You think people look like drag queen? What are you talking about? Tell me why. I mean, that's a very like bold statement from a male, so it's very interesting to know why you were saying that. You're talking about women look like drag queens or people look. You think women look like what is it? The nails and the hair and I don't know. What does a drag queen look like? The hair, the nails, the makeup. I don't know. I'm not a guy. I don't really look at women like that. But interesting take though. How many people agree with the drag queen or the stripper part? Oh, you're okay. So you're saying that's where the look came from. Oh, you're saying that they just mimicked who they were looking at, and they just happened to have been strippers, and therefore that was what the look became. I think, yeah, I feel like it does influence. Well, of course it does. I mean, it influences people when you're seeing something all the time, and you're a younger person looking for something to look at. So yeah, it could be said that that definitely influences it influences the look of today, obviously, but that's just because that's who's there. You know what I mean? Like whatever is going to be there, whatever Hollywood or film or Hollywood or the music industry puts out there, that's what you're looking at. So when you're a younger person and you're trying to discover yourself and discover a look, there was a time when everybody looked like Madonna, right? Everybody was wearing the lace with the lace gloves and the whatever. So it does influence. It absolutely influences. So if you just happen to have that look, you've got the high heels and you've got the makeup and you've got the big hair and you've got the long pointed nails. Yeah, then that means you're influencing people. I mean, I think we all know that to a certain extent, but maybe not how much it gets into your psyche. Getting tired of what do you mean getting tired of? Getting tired of what? Oh, the lack of talent in music. I wouldn't say it's a lack of talent. I'm not sure how old you are. You sound like you're a lot older because when you say something like talent, you're thinking Motown or back in those. Am I right? Yes. So you're thinking like more like legits. Like we would always put Mariah Carey in that category. You put Whitney Houston in that category. You put but you're talking like like Michael and OJ's and like real singing, like just very great voices. Um, but you always have those people that aren't like that. I mean, we had disco in the 70s. You had, probably something in the 60s, but a lot of like I said Bob Dylan, like Bob Dylan in the 60s. He wasn't the greatest singer in the world. No disrespect to Bob Dylan. I'm not trying to disrespect Bob Dylan. Yeah, no, it is. It's definitely something to be said. I'm not denying that possibility. It's just I never thought about it like that. Like I don't know. I've never heard anybody say that before that they look like drag queens. You're saying women dress like drag queens, and someone's saying mostly more like strippers. But both of those sound terrible, in the sense that you would throw that title on the outfits and the clothes of today. I'm assuming both of you are probably older. You're not. You know, no, you're actually not that old. Oh wow! I won't tell your age out loud, but oh, okay, very observant. That's interesting. You said Hollywood can no longer throw people on you. Well, most social media is doing it. They don't need to take those reins anymore. But the problem is when you have just a sort of a culture of people that are clashing with the culture that was developed in the Hollywood when we started coming out with the Weinsteins, the Epsteins, this type of the Diddy's now, and all that starts to reveal itself. Believe it or not, it's re-revealing itself because it was there during Hefner's days. It's re-revealing itself because it was there. You did have, you know, it's a Fatty Arbuckle scandal. So it did because you have certain types of people drawn to this type of work. It is not a stable working environment. So you have to have some sort of similar characteristics, and that tends to be one as they begin to reveal themselves when things start happening. And we're shocked every other couple of decades when it comes out. think this time it's worse. What do you mean this time? What is worse? Somebody. I make sense. Yeah, I try. What's worse? Oh, you mean what they were doing behind the scenes? There was the casting couch. Don't forget that. That wasn't of this time. Well, I mean, the trauma of it is probably the same. Now, maybe it was a little more sanitized because back then, it was still hush hush. But back then, sleeping for roles, to get casts on something was popular. Not popular, it was being done. Maybe not to the severity of them being grapes, grapings type thing. But it might have been then as well. Remember, out of all the people in the world that made the greatest impact in this area, and there were many, people could not believe that were of that era that Brooke Shields had the experience. She said that in her documentary Pretty Baby, that she had a graping experience. And it wasn't like a brutal graping. It was almost she couldn't believe it actually happened graping. And nobody expected that because nobody paid attention back then to how old she was or what she was building at such a young age and how little experiences she might have had in that area because she never had a chance to have a regular childhood. So when she revealed it, it was like nobody escaped it. You felt like, dang, everybody's going. I mean, people are lying about it, but everybody. What about back in what is the original Weinstein? Um, Alfred Hitchcock. I would attribute the original Weinstein to being Alfred Hitchcock. And if you look at his history, you had to sleep with him. Alfred Hitchcock. If you look, fact check me, I promise you. Someone said, Alfred Hitchcock. Fact check me. He had the same setup as Weinstein would eventually get busted for. I promise you. You guys know I don't just throw out anything. Fact check me. True story. True story. It's not a funny story. I mean, just it's funny because you guys are like, what? Where you know that from? How is that true? Fact check me. Just look back at the history and you'll see that you will find that it is now known that he had the same type of past. He meaning Alfred Hitchcock set up for his movies and being in his movies that Weinstein would ultimately be accused of having. All right, let's move in a little bit more. Economic factors. Cost of filming in Los Angeles has become a major concern, with major studios seeking more affordable options elsewhere. This goes back to pricing when we talked about production shifts. Goes to the studios. Now, interesting enough, yes, there are a lot of really are just a few that you actually end up touching if you've been in the business long enough. And because you have to. A studio is just that. It is a studio with lots of resources. There are a lot of successful independent studios. Somebody said, are the independent studios? What do you mean, are they? In real life, Sony Pictures is an independent studio, technically speaking, in a technical sense. It, people think I make this stuff. I'm serious. Fact check me. It's really a part of. It's a side piece of Sony, the electronic company. These are not separate things. So, I mean, that's kind of how it started. So. I always give interesting. If you get me in a setting like this where there's a lot of trivia, I have a whole bunch of it. So yeah, it's probably coming out now. It's probably the first time you actually see me in long form talk about these types of things. So yeah, so Hollywood, just Los Angeles as a whole, which is what's the traditional place to go to film, is just expensive. So it's expensive to live, it's expensive to be, it's expensive, period. But you add inflation to a place that's already expensive, then you're of course going to feel the weight of that. And interesting why you would inflate it on the one industry that people actually come there to be a part of. You would think that maybe they would keep in mind some sort of tax breaks for filming there, but they don't. So they send forcibly a lot of people to other places to film besides the original place where people go to film. One of the best parts of being in Los Angeles is that you can watch somebody film randomly out of nowhere. Might be on your street or something like that, or maybe you go tour one of the studios and something's filming there at the time. Yeah. Well, you won't see that as much. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. Basically, it's part of the downfall because it's literally forgot why people go there. It's almost like they forgot, like, the main reason people were. It's a destination location, or was. So the woke mindset, many people hated this, okay? Some critics argue that the perceived woke, and it's in quotation marks, mindset in Hollywood, particularly its like storytelling, has alienated some viewers. So here's the part about woke, okay? What the heck does it mean? Somebody explain to me what you're woke about. This is another sort of end of millennial, early Z's type of thinking. I'm woke. Well, woke with what? I find that the more the generations went on, the less of a foundation we had. And we had less of a foundation because we were overloaded with information. And when you're overloaded with information as a young child, not only does it detour your attention span, which we were concerned with at one point, but it also it makes your thinking too broad. And you don't have a foundational base to springboard from. Now, what I mean by that is you're thinking, I accept everything. I'm open to it all. That's not a base. A base is stable. You can springboard off of it, you can veer from it, but you go right back to it at the end. You can't have an entire culture of people with no foundation. And you wonder why you can't put out just any movie. Why movie is declining? Because there's no subject to go see, right? There's no everybody's open to everything. So no matter what you put out there, it's going to be less meaningful. I would say maybe indifference, but maybe not to that extreme. I wouldn't say apathy necessarily, but just the fact that there's you're telling a story, but you're telling a story that's been told 1,000 times. Because we heard it on social media 5 years before you actually put the movie out. Do you understand what I'm saying? So that's kind of facts. You guys like that one? I mean, I feel like you just ended it. It's like, how many times, do we have to watch these certain storylines? Like they're the same. You would have to actually sit down, people, and pay attention to where we're going. You can't just sit down and be like, what storylines was working? Come on, let's do it. Let's brainstorm. What we got? You might see anything? Anybody check social media? Anybody? That's not, you put out a movie that was based on something that happened on social media. Matter of fact, probably a true story that happened on social media. And that means we've seen it already. We've seen it, and you're looking at the promo going, for some reason, I don't want to go see that. You know what? I'll wait till it comes on video. It's going to come out in a week. You know what I mean? Like, you don't need to go to the movie. You don't need to see it. So how many movies have you passed on so far? A lot. You don't go to the movies anymore. I love to binge. Never thought about it. About how many movies you saw, or just thought about it? Facts. Truths. Oh, you're saying that. I'm trying. You know what I do. just. So the reason why I say that is people like woke. What was confusing about woke is that it had no base. They were woke and they were quoting that sentence like it meant something. And if you really thought about it, it didn't. I mean, it was a lot of thought and passion put into it too. I am woke. I know I am woke. But it just didn't have enough of a foundation. And what it did was sort of destroy people's desire to. Oh, well, no. I'm going to say it in the reverse. It gave people more of a longing for stronger foundation. Which means we weren't willing to just get any movie and make that popular. They said COVID-19 impacted a lot. Pandemics and subsequent shutdowns further exacerbated the challenges faced by the entertainment industry. Only in the sense that you could compare it to things that had foundation. Because you get to choose what you want to watch if you're watching in stream. So let's just say you wanted, there were usually back in the day like a moral to every story. You didn't have to agree with it, but it was a part of the story being a little more solidified, right? It was a solid story. Even if it's made up, we're not saying that it all has to be a true story. You had some solid foundations, and people could watch that if you're streaming, because you just pick the movies that make the most sense to you. If you look at Netflix, kind of get an idea of what people are actually watching. Not just watching, but rewatching. And then what this translated into in Hollywood was, then we should remake it. we're gonna substitute foundational structure, good scripts, and just repeat the ones that were already good. And how many times have you heard somebody say, you're already saying it, I hate remakes. Why did they remake that? What was the purpose? Because for the time it was solid. But you have to give it a new spin if you remake it. So if you remake something with a strong foundation, without a strong foundation, you're just messing it up, basically. You're just making it so people don't want to see it. Especially if it's at a time when you actually originally saw it. If you said Godfather 2, it's long, but let's pretend it's not. Or Scarface. Oh, here's a good example. Scarface 1 and 2. The original Scarface was in black and white. Okay, it was an old... Again, she's like, how do you know this? I know these things. The original Scarface was in black and white. And if it told the substance of the original foundation of Scarface was it's the Bugsy era age, right? But they remade it to the Scarface that we all now know and love. But it almost had nothing to do with the original other than the fact that the foundation was there. It is the only reason that remake worked, because it's not really a remake. It was old enough that people didn't even remember it. Many people didn't even know Scarface had an original story. But what they're doing is they're taking well-known stories. Like, I'm not saying don't do remakes, but I'm saying think about what you're remaking. Just think about that. The original Scarface wasn't like a super popular movie. And when they redid it, they didn't take the story. You couldn't have repeated it. It was too old. So they just sort of got the personality of the main character and took the character into story. Not trying to create an entire repeat script based on the same concept. That's woke. Woke is a concept that people actually live on. Hollywood will take a concept and turn it into a movie, but not necessarily a character and turn it into a sequel. And I think that's what they did in the second Scarface, because who you fell in love with in Scarface wasn't necessarily the storyline. It was the fact that the guy playing the what was the guy's name? Tony. I just know Al Pacino. So they were playing, the guy playing Tony in the story. That's who you're following. You're watching his life unfold on camera. You're not really watching the story like that. Trust me, I know. Okay, look at it. Trust me. Look at the original. Look at the. If you have 4 hours to kill, look at the actual Scarface we came to know and love, and you'll see the only movement was really the character. I don't know. I'm a nerd, so I pay attention to these types of things. So COVID-19, of course, impacted. We know the pandemic impacted a lot of things, but entertainment industry specifically, and the woke industry, the woke concept, really, I feel like probably killed it more than the actual COVID-19. It was starting to kill it a little bit before that, but as we translated these happenings as fast as they could in Hollywood, as fast as they could in entertainment, you were trying to keep up, and they were going faster. You know what I mean? Because there wasn't a clear understanding that there is no foundation. So you're looking for one. You're trying to see what this audience is structured under, and you're relying on older methods to find this structure without understanding that there isn't one. So you're throwing out Kim Kardashian at us. You're throwing out, I don't know who else is throwing out Beyonce's. You're throwing out these. Don't kill me, Beehive. I'm just saying. And you're throwing out Taylor Swift's, and you're just throwing them like darts on a board because you're looking for that one structure when there isn't one. So if you start with understanding that, you can bring structure to the unstructured and still not look like you're faking. That is not deep. It's just saying. I appreciate that, though. It really isn't, but thank you. Natural disasters. Okay, wildfires, reoccurring issues in California, have also contributed to the challenges facing the entertainment industry. I don't buy this one. I think it contributed to people getting tired of that culture. Now, some say the fires were intentional. I mean, this is neither here nor there. The point is the locations of all of the fires we needed to pay attention to. And if you want to add to it, the quiet, it's much like the healthcare industry, just not with the murder. They murdered the areas. Just like everybody was tired of healthcare, but you just don't feel like there's anything you knew about it, kind of thing. And there was not a lot of empathy going out when they were like, oh my God, I lost my home. And everybody's like, oh God, shut it. Not saying I was saying that, but it doesn't matter that you're being mean in the sense that that's probably something you shouldn't say if someone lost their house. I mean, but it's a sign of the indifference that was there. The reactions of how they felt like it was almost a comeuppance. When Paris Hilton was like, I watched my house burn on TV, and everybody was like, oh God, Paris, stop it. You know what I mean? It's like, why would you respond like that to somebody losing their house? To somebody, what if you watched your house that you earned burn? But they didn't respond like that because it was Paris Hilton. Now, if your local neighbor was standing there watching their house burn, you would just immediately go to them. So you have to look at the reactions of your audience, and the reaction was like, "Oh, yeah, too bad," Oh yeah, that's too bad. Yeah. All right, back to social media. It was like a glitch in time for everybody else. Although it was very serious in Los Angeles, it was a very serious thing for the people that lost their homes and all of these things. But if you think about how that helped the movie industry, it didn't. It was a sign of the times about how people were feeling about it. And about these people that had helped to build it. Entertainment as a whole, just in general. And then, of course, there are consequences to this decline, as anything would be. So it's going to be less productions. On-location filming in Los Angeles, it's decreased already. It's already doing it. And fewer productions are choosing that area. Now, I don't think that you're thinking, because you don't think the entertainment industries, particularly in Hollywood, ever change. But if you think about this in the long run, the less productions, it's going to have to shift somewhere. So say we have less movies or no movies at the theater. You have to already be thinking, where this audience is going to shift to. Because somebody's thinking they're already there. They're already on social media. But not necessarily. It needs to go somewhere. Those energies that were there, people love energies, have to shift somewhere. So if that does happen, where do you go? Not to other, states, but where do you go with your films? You're sick of rap. That's I'm reading. You guys, I'm not reading in any particular order, so I'm kind of skipping around so we can have variety to what we're talking about. Somebody said they're tired of. Let's talk about entertainment. Let's talk about how Puffy would be the first casualty, right? Uncle Russell. Oh, Russell Simmons, for those of you. I call him Uncle Russell, just because that's what his name was. That's what he was known by. Uncle Russell. Yeah, I was shocked by that. I did say that yesterday, actually. Thank you for reminding me. I said that. I just, yeah. I was just shocked by that. I don't know why. But if you remember, Russell Simmons was way back, way, way, way before Puffy. I don't even know where Puffy was at the time. But he's like he became the blueprint for Hip Hop Mogul. Yes, he did. His brother Run DMC, but his brother worked for him. Or he was an artist on his label. No, Run DMC was on Russell Simmons' label. That's his brother, right? But Russell Simmons is the mogul. He was the blueprint for what a music mogul would be. He had all those acts. I think it was like LL Cool J and Run DMC and all those acts back then were a part of Russell Simmons. That's right. Yeah, I know. So he became the blueprint. So when you hear somebody that did so much, like sort of be accused of something like that, you're just like, why is this happening right now? Like, you know, or you even for those of you modern day, if you don't remember who Russell Simmons, or you might know Russell Simmons, but in a different light, how much he did for the hip hop community, which somebody said they were sick of, but they gave their heart and soul for that back then because it was not popular back then. It was all like rock music and stuff like that. They were trying to break that through that. That's right. They hip hop artists could not be on MTV originally. Yeah, so to hear something like that, of course, it breaks your heart because you're like, dang, really. Even for some people, Puffy, the same thing. It was kind of like we knew he wasn't innocent, but all that was happening, everybody was like, really? Like, this is what we're doing now? We're doing all this? It was probably more than people could conceive. So the economic impact of this, the decline of the production has ripple effect, right? Impacting jobs, local businesses, and overall economy of Los Angeles. And that's what I was trying to say. When you rip the gut out of something, believe it or not, it's going to have to be replaced. So it would have made more sense for Los Angeles, unless it wanted to turn into a all business town, to make some sense out of the entertainment filming there. When I saw that there would be increases and all of these things, this was back in the day. It didn't make. And I saw Netflix, which was down the street, rising. They were looking for scripts like crazy before they became what they become now. But there was a time when Netflix was still just considered Netflix. And it was rising at the time. And so it was rising and it was becoming, and they were still making it more difficult to film. That's before even now where it finally became noticeable. So what we're seeing, and I want to make sure I emphasize this, in entertainment, period, whether it's movies, film, whatever, is that this stuff was coming. It just finally hit the fan. But it was already coming. It was already going to boil over. There was nowhere else for it to go because of the choices that were being made at the time. And you have to look back to learn from something, to look back in retrospect. If Hollywood started, the meat of it was to bring movie stars to encourage other people to want to live there, to become sort of an exclusive area, how much of that, how far away are you from that original idea? If the big explosion of hip hop, for those of you that are talking about hip hop, exploded and broke through all of the barriers, if we want to accredit Uncle Russell to that, or Russell Simmons to that, you have to think about how far we got from that and how much was actually exposed. Because how many egos were the complaint at the time when you talk about hip hop? I mean, egos always end up being part of the story. And how long can you do that before you start to break down? Before you start to fall? Puffy had a huge ego. Many of them did. I'm saying as a whole. Now I'm looking, remember, I look at things as a business. I'm talking about the business. The business is shaped by individuals, but you have to choose sometimes your individuals carefully, because they have to speak to what you're trying to sell. If you're selling movies, then what people are saying about what you're doing makes a difference outside of the Hollywood confines, right? If you're Hollywood and you've been on top, as far as movies and people wanting to be there, and think about what's changing right now. People aren't coming to America as much. They're not. Fact check me on that one. Look at the flights. This is a decline in coming to America, period. Let alone people complaining every minute about inflation, tariffs, and everything else, and you want to raise your prices because that's what you had on your books for a long time. It's like you have to have the ability to adjust, and it hurts. Hurts because in the beginning, in Los Angeles specifically, I was there. We didn't even wear masks because nobody thought it was going to touch them. I told this story and somebody cracked up laughing because they couldn't believe that was true. And it was the truth. The general consensus is nobody wore a mask. We didn't wear a mask until they were forcing us to. And we realized people were dying. But before that, when they just said COVID's happening, there's always some kind of pandemic, natural disaster, something going on. I mean, I'm not going to run around wearing a mask because it was that kind of attitude. If you can remember back. It was that kind of attitude, like, what? There were the few cautious people, probably from somewhere else, like visiting or something that was wearing a mask. But for the most part, just the foundation of people, they weren't wearing it. They were going to have to be forced to wear it because they were like, no. So I say that thinking can encapsulate you. It is a very bubble type existence, and it's a great existence, but you still have to keep in mind what it's there for. And same thing when you have the foundation that's built on egos. It's very difficult. It's very difficult to keep the quality of life up. If the quality of life goes down, so does the product. Because you're more willing at that point to cut a corner. I'm not saying music is bad. Not at all. I'm just saying it's saturated. So when it's saturated, you get that impression that everything's been heard before. People keep the same cadence all the time. Listen to the rappers today. And I like a lot of the songs, don't get me wrong. But the cadence is the same. Rap cadence, Because it's what everybody wanted to be. So how do you break through that in order to build income? The rap songs are trash. Well, they're not. I mean, there's some good. It's not that it's not good cadence. It's just that it's the same. Kendrick Lamar. Everybody says Kendrick Lamar, but that's like probably the one stand-up. But he's kind of goes in line with, I think the messages of his songs, definitely arrangements of the songs are pretty good. I like him. So, I mean, he's one of my favorites. So I would think that he stands out for probably that kind of reason. Forgettable. I don't know about all that. I wouldn't say he's forgettable. Pushed on you, but you know, if you're not a hip hop fan, then all of that music is pretty much gonna be pushed on you because you're not gonna really like. It's not music you think is good. What happens with now that if Puffy gets so that I talked about Puffy being an institution like videos ago. It might even still be up. That I talked about Puffy being an institution, and even though outside of all of his personal happenings and whether or not he goes to jail and all of these things, gets a pardon, we learned from later today. But rather, all of these things happen. What about the industry that has that gap that was there? Because some people say, oh, he didn't really do me, but he filled the space there. He filled the space. You know what I mean? He's been around a long time. So that's a hole that's now going to be empty if he doesn't go back to work like that. It's saturated, meaning there's a lot of people. Yeah, it's saturated, meaning there's a lot of rappers. It's saturated like saying, for every lawyer in law school, there's just as many lawyers practicing. It's that type of scenario. And one of the, like, what do you do? Like, say, for example, I'll use another industry completely, just to give you an idea of what we're trying to talk about. When they had lawyers, which they always do, and they have a saturation of lawyers, which they always do, practicing different laws, which they always do. But there was a time when they said people are paying too much for lawyers. And they had a law that they wanted to pass to say that they could only make 15%. I don't know if any of you remember this. Lawyers, you could pay 50%, 15%, but nothing else. It's kind of like, and they said, no, we're not doing that. First of all, we went to school for too long. First of all, I don't even practice the same law. First of all, each case is different. And they sort of went in like that. They went in with the understanding that each case is different. Each lawyer is different. It requires something more significant, a lot of work and research, and therefore 15% may not be enough for what you're doing. And it didn't pass, obviously, because lawyers are still expensive, right? Now, you're like, okay, how does that apply to entertainment? So if you apply the thought process to entertainment, you're basically saying there's a bunch of people doing pretty much the same, right? So shouldn't you all be paid the same type of thing? And it's like, no, stop looking at your audience as one size fits all, right? Stop looking at your situation as one place fits all. You have to start thinking about how the ripple effect would happen down the road. Because if you would have put 15% on every attorney, some of the good attorneys would have stopped practicing. Some of the other attorneys would have never been, because now it's not a profession you can make a lot of money at. And you're left with what? People willing to practice at that discount. Do you see what I'm saying? People willing to practice at that discount. So it's like if you start compromising what is the base, the entertainment part is before the business, right? If you start compromising what the consumers are consuming, what the viewers are seeing, what the people are looking for, and you don't ask them what they're actually looking for, you're just going to water down the product to try to fit what you think is there. So we all know social media waters a lot of things down, but does that mean you start watering down what you're, right? If you're LA and your base was to film, do you start charging more now? As if the economy doesn't exist? Because the people that really pay those real prices are the people that come there from outside, from the small towns from somewhere. Now, you don't want too much of that. Obviously, I understand that. But you don't want to start penalizing the root, which are the people that film there. Just didn't make sense. But that was the goal, and they stuck to that. They had planned that, I don't know, maybe 6 years before. But they stuck to that plan without changing it for inflation, without changing it for, and businesses leaving and them hemorrhaging people, and they did not care. They stuck to that plan, and it almost didn't make sense because I felt like their fear for them was to lose that Los Angeles mystique or that Hollywood, which is fine because that is part of it too. But you can't hit that area. You can't hit it by increasing what it is to be there. You don't want to water it down. I understand. You don't want just anybody moving there. But you do want to take into consideration who's paying to be there. And it's not the people that are from there. If that makes sense. Because they want to be there so badly, they're willing to pay that price for it. All right. Thoughts, comments? Agree, don't agree? It's a difficult place to navigate. Not really. What do you mean by that? Difficult place? You mean Hollywood, or are you talking about music? Music industry. So music industry was always difficult because of their contracts. They have contracts for like 7 years or something like that. I mean, to me, the concept sounds crazy. But you can pay that person, somewhat what they were making like in the beginning if you get the wrong contract. Also, anything you get, and I have explained this before, when you go and you're like, hey, I got a record deal, you're all happy, and they're throwing money at you, you pay it back. It's a loan, basically. And some people go in there not knowing that. They're like, what do you need? So I've found, I've never worked in music specifically, but I know the contract part of it. And they're like, oh, I need a place to stay, and I need this, and I need, pay for that, and I'm going to go on tour for this, and you just start saying a bunch of stuff, and they're just giving it to you, and you're thinking, I'll make it back, but look at how far in debt you could actually get if you're only getting so many points on your sales. Back then it was CDs, right? So many points on your CDs. You get like 4 to 2 points. I mean, up to 8, right, on a CD. So it's probably different with the downloads. But if you remember, just basically that it is a loan. I mean, you would probably do things differently. Maybe, I don't, somebody said TLC. That was always the classic case, right? TLC. Prince was another one. Prince was 19 when he signed his contract with Warner Brothers. And he was, I don't know, was he like almost 50 when he was wearing the slave thing on his son? Look at how long that is. The original. There's this goes way back with it. Prince used to have this album called With You. It was like, he has like an afro, and you probably don't even know it's Prince, but that was like his first. And then I think for Warner Brothers, he had that Prince album with the purple lettering on the front. Had the little flipped hair with the blue background. People are like, what? Yes, he did. That was how Prince started. They probably don't have him anymore. I mean, it was like a record. You'll find them like in the record stores for like DJs and stuff like that. When you guys go get those LPs, if you really look, you'll probably see an old Prince one. Like back then, the covers were like little, they were like little symbols to sell the product. So another impact besides financial is a shifting landscape. Hollywood is facing an existential moment as it grapples with the changing entertainment landscape, and they need to adapt to new business models. Did I not just say that? Did I not just, isn't that not the theme? That's the theme. You know what I mean? It's there saying, yes, we had, business models that did certain things in certain times, and some of that you do want to keep. But when it is blown up is the problem. You almost make more sense going, right? Rolling up the sleeves, rubbing the hands together, and figuring out how to get ahead of the curve. And that's not easy. And I think Hollywood, there's people that are comfortable there. There's people that, have a different agendas, and they want to not have to do that. So they just keep pumping out what they think is going to be popular, no matter how many decreases they actually see. You cannot blame COVID for the level of decrease. You can blame it for some of it, but you can't blame it for everything. Questions, comments, anything? Um, you don't think people think celebrities are glamorous anymore? I think so. So celebrity has to be separate, really, at this point. I'm separate conversation at this point because I think when you can have a regular YouTube, no TikToker, regular TikToker, and I couldn't get over this when I first heard it and it actually worked, and someone just said, "What happens if we just unfollow?" Like, it wasn't that she was saying that and everybody did it. It was the fact that she said it as if everybody was already thinking it. Like they followed not because they were like, "That's funny." They followed because they were like, "Yeah, what would happen?" Like why do we follow celebrities? Like, what are we thinking? You know what I mean? Like it posed a question that made you rethink, and it had no answer. So you know what? Unfollow. You know what I mean? Like it was like, it, and it was interesting enough for it to tell you those are things you need to be looking at in entertainment. You need to look at something like that happening. You're like, oh, that doesn't happen all the time. It's not a common occurrence. You know, some of them bounce back, and you know, but they didn't bounce back really. Why? Because you see it in the revenue, in the sales, in the looking at interviews. You know, you can follow and never remember you followed. You know, subscribe and forget you subscribed. But you cannot, not pay to go to the movies is going to be more significant than that. Unfollowing people might show a little bit of something, but it does say something. And I felt like that was completely like overlooked. Like, oh, we'll just keep pumping them out the same way we always did. Just get their favorite ones, just throw. But you start seeing tours are not doing as well, right? You start to see that people almost have to brainwash their people to keep them following, to get them to go to their concerts, to get them. I mean, they have to go to really extreme measures. You have to have extreme people follow you, like almost obsessed people follow you. And that's going to kill the quality of people that are up and coming because people don't want that. Some people are willing to take the risk. Okay, fine. I had to have some crazies to sell my records or to, be in my, I'm going to, that's fine as long as I'm safe, like as long as I keep them from me. But there's a whole group of people that are probably more talented that would say, I'm not doing that. And they would be equally as famous and equally as possible, but they're not equally as popular, but they don't want to take that sacrifice. You know what I mean? There are people that have a tremendous amount of innovative talent. These are rare individuals, but they have a lot of standards and a lot of lines that they're not going to cross. And you completely block them out when all this stuff is exposed and you see this type of environment. You don't even, you'll go off and become a lawyer or something. You're not going to put yourself in that situation. Or even the potential of having to get out of a situation like that. You're just not going to go there. And you start leaving yourself with people that compromise, which for the ability of being malleable is probably great. But as far as the people, you get less of what you had before. And that's sort of, I say all that to say, as we wrap it up, that's the theme. The theme is what you're not getting, not what we have, but what we're not getting. That's the decline. The decline isn't coming from the obsessed fan that's going to follow you no matter what they're doing. They know you, they breathe you, they live you, they are you. You spoke to me in a dream. These people. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about what type of people go work on those production staffs. What type of people will bring that innovative film to film it in that town? what type of people that have solutions that won't even touch them because they're just not wanting to be involved in that situation. That's how you make change. You don't make change by doing the same thing over and over again. You don't make change by decreasing the quality of what you're doing. In the golden eras of music, and everybody crossed every T and dotted every I. They made it that way so you could sustain itself. Because back then they were building something. When you're building something, you have a tendency to take more caution than you would if you just got used to something. And they sort of took that situation in entertainment as it was building and continued to build, and you could bring your friends in and everybody could, do this. And they sort of built it and then took the foundation out, but just held on to the cliff. The harness fell, but they're still hanging on the cliff. And it's like, what do you do in a case like this? You call for help, but you can't get help from the right people. Because if you call the wrong person, they're going to just step on you and you're going to fall down that cliff. Because they're not interested in saving you at all. You know what I mean? This is what happens when you compromise too much. You also have to be paying attention. You have to pay attention to what they're actually doing. Not like sometimes stats and all of those things are wonderful. I'm big on stats and statistics. Very big. But if you think about a decline, it's more important how you bounce back. 22% is the number of Los Angeles area productions have declined 22%. This is from January to March of just this year. It was just a few short months ago, if you think about it. It's not like this is happening in yesteryear. What it is doing is it's happening right now. And I feel like entertainment needs to respond more quickly. I think that they're waiting and they're trying to look at charts and you have to do these things. I'm not saying don't. But you can't wait too long. Right, question, comments. Anybody agree, disagree? Crazy, right? Yeah, oh, you're talking about that stat? No, yeah. That's just at the beginning of this year. If you have an interest, the top 5 actors, actresses, number 1 is Scarlett Johansson. No, she's done a lot of what has she been in? She's been in a lot of movies. Surprise, surprise, but not surprise, because I love him, Samuel L. Jackson. But surprise because you probably didn't know they were still ranking, and they have been around that long. But yes, here's number 3. You're probably gonna hit the floor. Robert Downey Jr. Great underrated actor, but we know why. And then Zoe Saldana. I know who she is, but I can't pronounce her last name. Now look at this. Look how far removed this list is from what people were actually thinking. Look at how far this list is from what people were actually thinking. I will repeat that statement. Did anybody tell me what you thought about this list? Somebody said, what the heck? So you talking about Scarlett Johansson? No way, Scarlett Johansson. No way, Scarlett Johansson. No, she's number 1. I'm looking at it. You understand Samuel, but not Scarlett Johansson. Why is Scarlett Johansson above Samuel L. Jackson? I don't know. I think they're looking at revenue. Where is that the guy from Limitless? Oh no, he's a good actor. Yeah, he was in something else too. Star is Born. Yep. Why Okay, so the general is, why is Scarlett Johansson before Samuel L. Jackson? I don't know. I did not make this is not my list. I'm not making this list up. This is just a list that it says that's what it is. Um, I don't know why that. I actually was shocked about that because it almost. But I guess it includes revenue. But then, how many movies have Samuel made lately? So that's actually saying something because it also revenue. It depends on when your last movie, was kind of thing. People have some favorites on there. Bradley, I didn't say his name. What's his name? Bradley Cooper. Is that the guy from A Star Is Born? In Limitless. Okay. Well, she just said the guy from Limitless. She didn't say his name. Or he didn't say it. I'm sorry. He just said the guy from Limitless. He didn't say his name. But thank you, though. Everybody's like, can we find out who that is? Sorry. It's out of touch. You think the whole list is out of touch? Or just some of it? The list is out of touch. No, I mean, because you're thinking revenue based, you didn't realize probably for modern day she was making more money than Samuel L. Jackson. Not making more, but like probably filming more at this point. I don't see a lot of her stuff. Meaning Scarlett Johansson. Sorry, I have to say people's name. So I can't really. I mean, I don't know what I've seen her in. To be honest, I haven't been to the movies in so long, and this is why I'm saying the list is out of touch. That's why I'm saying it's out of touch. I wasn't saying necessarily revenue wise. I was saying it's out of touch because when's the last time you seen a Scarlett Johansson movie? When's the last time you seen Samuel L. Jackson movie? When's the last time you've seen a Robert Downey Jr. movie? Like, you have to really think about it at the movies, not on streamer. Yeah, so it's hard to, yeah. So I'm like, they might be the top movie stars, but I mean, shouldn't that be reevaluated a little bit and include some of the stuff that's on these streaming movies? Yeah, that's another thing too. How you get paid for streaming movies, things that go straight to stream. I'm gonna call it straight to stream. Go straight to stream, meaning that it was never at the box office. It just like straight to video, right? It's straight to stream. So going straight to stream, you have to think of the transition in income for the people involved. Because the behind the show is the business. Behind the show, remember that. Behind the show is the business. And Hollywood actors might still be visible, but that doesn't mean Hollywood itself is in decline. And same thing with entertainment. Same thing with music. I said, we may not feel the effects of what happens after Diddy leaves or Diddy's pushed to the background or stops working or, tries to make a comeback, as it were. But you will feel it, just not right away. But you'll feel it in music because it's ever present. So it's kind of like one of those things you didn't think about. But there is a hole when somebody, whether you love them or hate them, there's a hole when somebody like that is missing. So what do you do to repair that? You push at the audience more of the people that were making the most money. So just as everybody just said Samuel L. Jackson, what the heck is Samuel L. Jackson doing behind Scarlett Johansson? In the movie, when you look at the numbers, it looks like push Scarlett Johansson more. But if you ask the people, they're like, why is she behind Samuel L. Jackson? This makes no sense. Like, I'm almost mad. But if you're just looking at the numbers and not listening to the audience, you're just pushing Scarlett Johansson more. So she's going to be seen more. She's going to be on more social media. She's going to do more press junkets. She's going to be on some PR stunts. She's going to film some more movies. And really, everybody's like, can we see Samuel more? You know what I mean? Like, so I think that that's the displacement there. That's when you're not paying attention because you're just sort of trying to hang on and stop from falling, not realizing the safety harness has fallen and you are hanging on a cliff. But you have to know how to figure out how to get yourself off of there. And one of the ways to do that is really to listen to your audience more. Not what you're pushing at them, because those days are not going to exist anymore, because you can always just stop and go straight. The exact movies you want to see, no matter how old they are, the exact people you want to look at. If you're like, hey, I don't know why Samuel L. Jackson, or I keep looking at Scarlett Johansson, I'm going to go stream some old Samuel L. Jackson movies, until he puts a new one out. But in the meantime, they're pushing somebody at you you're not even paying attention to. This is not to say she doesn't have fans. I'm not killing Scarlett Johansson, right? I'm just saying the big difference from just this little bit. Imagine if it was on a larger scale. When you have people going all in on, oh man, let's just cancel. I'm so tired of, let's just unfollow people. To ignore that is almost criminal, because it's going to hurt your bottom line. And that's what I believe that's what you're starting to see. You're starting to see, I'm not paying attention to that over here. I need to push this because I need to pull in revenue. It's like in sales, if you have a desperate salesperson. And you're like, calm down. Like, I don't want to buy from you just because you're pushing it so hard. Like, stop already. Like, let me choose which car I want to buy or whatever. I'm making stuff up. Yeah, I don't know if car salesmen are pushy anymore, but let's pretend they were. But that's kind of the thing that could be the theme here, is that you're just pushing it because it's making you money, and it's getting to the point of it's just off-putting. Not Scarlett Johansson. I know. She's cute. Or you said she's hot. I'm not going to say that, but she's cute to people. And a lot of people follow her. I personally don't really kind of know who she is. I mean, I know who she is, but I don't really follow. I have not seen any movies that she was in. So she has an audience for sure. But apparently a very large audience. Okay. Okay, put real quick, Samuel or Scarlett. Let's see how many we get. Scarlett, Samuel. Neither. What do you mean, you're not voting? Samuel. This is a Samuel audience. Maybe because you're my audience. I like Samuel. She's okay, but can't compare to Samuel. Right? What about Robbie Downey Jr.? I like his stuff, but he doesn't film as much. But I guess the more of the point is everybody wanted to know why Samuel was behind Scarlett Johansson. And when you look at it just visually, I was never a person that just goes by the statistics. You'll always hear me add some sort of way, some analysts. I don't look at the statistics, I analyze them. So when I'm looking at something like that and I see that huge disconnect from the audience, you can see why it's declining. That doesn't make any sense. If immediately when I put that up there, everybody jumped on the fact that Samuel L. Jackson was behind Scarlett Johansson. Which means in real life, you would have wanted to see more from him and Bradley Cooper, because he wasn't even on the list of the top 5, than you would have wanted to see from Scarlett Johansson. Not that you don't want to see Scarlett Johansson, so please don't send me hate mail. But the audience would have said something different. You probably would have taken the time to see those two and probably added a Scarlett Johansson movie or go to see one, but you really, really will pay to go see one of them. That's how I would look at that and go, wait a minute, so now we need to sort of relook at. But in order to use those two actors, you have to ingest the content. Do you see what I'm saying? So that's where you start making changes. You see, this is what they're asking. Well, why are they asking this? What kind of movies do these two people do? Let's look at the content of the movies of these two people. Let's look, and you start realizing, if you compare it to Scarlett Johansson's content, I know her content, not necessarily how she is in it, but you would say this is a different types of movies. That this audience is actually different than Scarlett Johansson's audience. And how do you capitalize on these on somebody that's a legend, because everybody knows who Samuel Jackson is. Like, does he want to do a movie, right now? What kind of movie is he going to want to do and what he's passionate about? And then, for Bradley Cooper, everybody's like, well, he wasn't in the top 5, so I'm confused. Why is he? Why did anybody ever bring him up off the list? And then this is a small amount of it, but you would have to do this on like a consistently larger scale. And then you're asking, are we pushing Scarlett Johansson, or are the audience looking for Scarlett Johansson? You see. Hollywood's dead. Oh, I don't know about all that. It'll never fully die. Let's just make that statement. It'll never fully die unless they keep killing it. But they might. I think you have to be. Hollywood, or even entertainment as a whole, may have a clear plan, and because sometimes, of course, those strategic plans, are years ahead of time, because you have to be prepared for what you think is going to happen. But I think to fail to notice that we're in the middle of inflation, who our president is, how tariffs affect the economy, what's Puffy's presence or distance or imprisonment or not imprisonment going to affect what's happening. To not notice that there is a lot of accusations, if you don't flat out believe them, of people being raped, of people being put in situations they don't want to be put in, of people being taken advantage of people being having to be a part of something, a certain society, to even be popular. And so if you look at all that and you need to make changes to those things, they need to be faster than what they're doing in order to build revenue. No, in order to build revenue, it's about the revenue. They're declining. When they say Hollywood is declining, not just in talent, they're saying they're declining in revenue. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a question to save AMC. Oh, very good fact. Did you watch my videos, or did you just know that on your own? Yeah, there was a race to sort of save AMC's, which are kind of like luxury movies, I guess. Luxury movie houses, I call them. All right. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you got a little bit of something out of this one. A very interesting subject. We can cover a little bit more in depth when you guys are ready to talk about it more. Also, just to end with, I'm not bashing, Hollywood. I'm not bashing, entertainment as a whole. But I am saying that they're not paying attention. And they're not paying attention to the most important parts of what we as the audience need to be seeing. Right. And to help shift, because they have so much influence, society to the better the quality, the higher the pay. Let's just be honest, right? There's a reason why people buy a Bugatti versus, that's why a Bugatti is a dream for some people, and not I don't know, any other kind of one, bash a car, a more economical car. It's the quality of how it's made. You can't have bad quality and have people desire to purchase it really bad. The people wanted the golden era of Hollywood, and they still look back and dream about it because of the quality of the people that were there. Even if it was forced, they still made you a quality person. Because they realized you can sell cheap things, but it's going to, you can sell cheap things to certain people. But to build revenue, you have to appeal to people that are going to spend it. So first you figure that out. Who is the audience today? How has this audience been damaged because, they're so woke all the time, and, all of these things. And, there's a lot of scandals right now. So you got to think about the scandals. And yes, streaming is affecting the movies, but if the movies, first of all, weren't going so fast to streaming, number one, and number two, it has to go fast to streaming now. It's too late to turn back on that one, because once that decision was made and it happened, everybody got used to that. So if you don't and you go back to waiting a long time, you're going to have vacant theaters for longer periods of time. So I wasn't suggesting that. I was just saying it already happened. It was a bad move, but you have to just continue that road because it's already expected at this point. Yeah, because it'll just be sitting out there longer. Like you'll be sitting at the movie. The movie will be out longer, but not necessarily have more people. Yeah. No, you don't have to agree with what I'm saying. I definitely am not in here. I'm in here to debate and to talk, but not, you don't have to agree with what I'm saying. That's perfectly fine. Do you think that they should leave the movies out longer? No, not necessarily. But it would it. You don't think it would hurt it? Oh, I think it would. Yeah. I mean, either one of us could be right or wrong, but I'm just saying that I just couldn't see that after all that has happened and all that we have been through with prices the way that they are, that would actually make sense at this point. So you're almost making the movie the ancillary place to go, the theater. You're almost flipping the channels. Flipping the page. You're making the additional revenue come from the movie theater, and the main revenue coming from the stream. You can't. What I'm saying is they had no choice but to do it that way. Once that model hit the air waves, it changed everybody's thought process about how fast you're supposed to get something to their house, basically, in a convenient spot where they could watch it. So that changed. So once that changed, it's hard in this economy, the way that the world is today, to go back. That's what I mean. All right, you guys, we will talk more at another time. I want to thank you so much. I want to go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you so much. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Make sure you check out, some of the other videos, my TikToks, trying to grow my lives. And I don't know, I enjoy talking to you this way. You guys are kind of getting used to me not being on camera. I will be back on camera, by the way. Miss looking at you, really? You mean like having something to see? I get you. But I feel like you can still get the gist of what I'm saying, and maybe even a little bit more if I'm not visible. But I can do other things while I'm doing this, so that's why I have it with cameras not showing. But I will do more. But I am trying to build my live, so this is helping me to do that. Thank you so much, you guys. And if you can hear this, I will see you next time.